Hey there, C-Note here. Welcome back to Dopamine. I just wanted to send a quick message and a quick little mini podcast about the end of the year and what this tends to mean for us in terms of what's next, what's come before. Usually this is like a check-in point, a transition point. So hopefully the holiday has been good for you. If it has not been good for you, that's okay too. That's going to happen for plenty of us. And, whether we're dealing with family or the holidays bring up some sort of issue with our past, or, we're having to do a lot of work, or we're having to figure out how to balance work. For me personally, like when I take time off, I'm not getting paid because I'm freelancing. So finding that balance between rest and work is really difficult, and allowing myself to take the time off that I need has been difficult. But time with the family has been good. I haven't gotten a chance to see my family because of like pandemic stuff, and it's been good to hang out with the kids, but we all are also very tired. What I've been doing towards the end of this last week of the year is we've just done we did some deep cleaning today, and what I like to do, something my dad taught me, is to enter the year with a fresh start. So that might mean wiping some things down, dusting things, cleaning things, making sure you have food in your fridge if you're capable of doing that, or if your life circumstance allows for that. And sort of getting to a place where you can kind of enter the new year with a sort of fresh perspective. One of the challenges of that is sometimes we can carry things from the previous year with us. And so I think it's that year in review aspect is important, but I think it's also important to notice what you do review. So it's really possible and really easy to get into a cynical space and look at all of the negative things that have happened in the last year, especially if you're very socially focused and you're trying to think about the big picture all the time. It is very easy to get caught up in whatever the news has told you to be fearful of, or to keep your mind on, or even your friends or social sphere has had you keep your mind on. But there are all sorts of micro things that are important to take stock of. And I think it's important to use this opportunity as a point of gratitude, as a point of launching forward. And so if you're able to document, whether it's like voice recording on a podcast or just for yourself, maybe taking some notes. There's stuff in the background, by the way. So if there's weird like farting noise sounds, that's because they're doing work in my building, and there's not a lot I could do about that. But I want to do this quick podcast. And but anyway, so if you have a chance to journal, you have a chance to go back in time in some sense and look at some of the past things in your personal life, not in the world. It's not about the world, quote unquote, or pop culture or the news or whatever outlets you follow, or Twitter or anything like that, to tell you what the last year has been like for you. This is a self-discovery, right? This is about mining what has been good for the last year for you. For me, I had the opportunity to do profiler training and go to a live event again and get those wheels greased, as it were, and that's been really amazing. Molly and I got into wrestling again this year for some reason, and she really loves it, and that's really surprising, and that's something we do regularly. We really love following the narrative, and it's really interesting to see the storytelling transitions and stuff like that. It's really like this athletic theater, and all of that's really interesting. I think we've grown a lot this year in terms of our relationship to the kids. I think we've gotten in a better flow with the kids when they're around, which is much more often, thankfully. We went through like a court situation, and all that's been ironed out, and that's been really great. I myself have gone through a lot of personal healing this year. There's still always a lot to go, but I've gotten an opportunity to really feel more, to learn some practices where I can get a better sense of what it actually feels like to feel my feelings, start to develop a better relationship with my self-preservation side of like handling resources. And I'm actually losing weight. I lost 12 pounds this year, mostly towards the end of the year, but I'm 12 pounds down, and that feels really good. So that's something I can celebrate. And so what comes as a result of whatever it is that you do and you're able to write down and take note of, even if it's just a few things. This is not about comparison. to other people's things, whether or not someone else has it better or worse. Everyone's story is unique and different, so just focus on yourself. And so with this comes what's coming next, right? Like what's coming next for you. And it really depends on your ability to project, so don't worry about, again, having to do it a certain way or having to think very detailed or very, very far ahead when it comes to what you're visioning, right? So I think there's two ways to think about it. I tend to think about vision versus goals. Some people have goals for the year. They have maybe a certain weight that they want to get to, or they have a certain thing that they want to achieve. They want to run a marathon, or they want to create some sort of consistency, or they want to improve a relationship with a family member or something like that. Something where even that last one wasn't really something you can put a metric to, but if you are someone that prefers to use metrics, you totally can. And that can guide you day to day. And I would encourage you to make some sort of goal or vision to be attainable, something you can actually do, because if it's too easy, then it doesn't feel like you did anything. And if it's too hard, then it's discouraging and you're not going to want to keep doing it. It's like, what can you do that is incremental? What is something that you can do that you could chip away at every day? And something that you feel like is attainable based on where you are in your life right now. And so the other side of it is thinking about vision, right? And vision changes. So vision is like, what are you casting for yourself for this year? What would you like to happen? Not necessarily what you're going to make happen. And I think this really depends on, sometimes it's a personality type factor. I think judgers tend to set goals. Perceivers tend to cast visions. Because perceivers, we're responding to the outside world and adapting all the time. So if we are able to shift constantly, that means we're going to be moving all around and the vision might change. But in my mind, I think about vision as a big mountain in the distance. It's kind of blurry. You're not really sure of the details of what the mountain actually looks like, what that experience is going to be like. But as you get closer, even if you're meandering, based on parallax and the idea that something massive in the distance is not going to move as fast as something in front of you, that you can still see it in the distance, even if you're moving in that general direction. And it's becoming clearer and clearer as you get closer to it. And maybe you're walking towards something you didn't really think, you didn't know what it was until you get closer to it. And that's what I mean by vision. Vision is being able to cast some sort of kind of general idea of what you would like. What I would like to happen for this year for Molly and I is to figure out some way to improve our income so that we can get Molly a car. And getting Molly a car can start to open up other doors for us to be able to do other things in other ways. And so that's, to me, a bit of a goal, but it's also, I know that might change as the circumstances change. So as the circumstances change, I'm not going to feel frustrated that I can't hit that goal necessarily, because if I'm still walking in that general direction, even if there are detours or meanderings, like, I'm still focused on that general direction. I'm not necessarily focused on how to get there specifically, or it's not something that I'm beating myself up for and have to walk a specific path to get there. And so for me, that's one big thing I'm thinking about for the next year. And so I think casting a vision for yourself is like, it's like writing up a dream board. It's like, what would I like to happen? And as you just kind of go through life over the next year, just check it every once in a while, right? And I guess the last thing I would like to offer is to be careful of this trap of getting into the new year and assuming that because it's a new year that new things are supposed to happen. In reality, we're just operating based on people time, and this is, time is a thing that is intangible, and we have created ways to make it referenceable by having dates, by having time that we can all calibrate to. But, because it's a new year, because the calendar date turns over, doesn't mean things are supposed to happen. I always hear like, it's 2021 and life should be like this by now. And it's like, the year doesn't actually mean anything. When someone says that, you're usually referencing like what life was like 30 years ago versus today, and maybe what the movie said the future was supposed to be. and because we're not there now, that can be disappointing. But that's just not a thing. Don't worry about that. So don't get into this trap of as the days start to go on and you're not necessarily hitting a goal, or you're not seeing the vision clearly as you're going along, that it's like, ugh, I can't wait until the next year happens. It's like, if 2022 isn't starting out great, that doesn't mean 2023 is going to be better or worse. Like, these are just numbers. These are just reference points. These are just ways that we track circularly, the things for history's sake, so we can have a reference point. But everything is moving forward. Time is moving. I wouldn't even say forward. Time's more of a circular thing, I think. But the way that we capture it is not necessarily relevant to whether or not something is going to be better, right? So just because it's January 1st, 2022 doesn't mean that there's anything that has to be better or worse than January 1st, 2021. Does that make sense? And so try not to worry about, like, that's another form of external comparison. You can compare yourself to people, but even if you're comparing yourself to your previous self in a negative way, that can be the same thing as referencing an external person as something you're comparing yourself to in a way that's unhelpful, right? It's okay to get, if you're working on goals, it's like that reference point is helpful because it's a metric. But if you're working on something emotionally, then that's going to be much harder to reference, unless, again, you're tracking it based on, like, taking notes of yourself and eventually going back in time every year and checking what those notes have been and checking in on yourself and what things have been like and how they can go forward. So, you might be in a healing space and still working on that, and that's very okay. You might have to go easy on yourself in terms of what the goals are or what the vision is for yourself. If you're very much in an achievement space and you're like, I want to do this, 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 and this, then be ambitious. That's great. But also, if you're being ambitious and, things are not going the way that you want them to, then that's cool too. Recalibrate. Just because you're casting a vision right now, like the pandemic we didn't expect the pandemic to happen. So that was a really difficult time, and really has been still, for people to pivot and figure out what's going to happen. We never know what's going to happen. We could get a phone call the next day that's going to derail our world. And so do your best to try to not get too tied to the vision or too tied to a specific goal, because things are going to change and you're going to have to take it day by day, moment to moment, and feel it out. And have contingency plans, adapt to the circumstances. So I know all this is kind of vague, and it has to be, because your circumstances are your circumstances, and I can't help you with that. What I would like to do, something that I haven't put officially together yet, is I would like to, it's another vision for myself for 2022, is to try playing with monthly workshops where we almost do a live recording of, like, a podcast or a deep concept, and you can come on the webinar or wherever and ask questions, and we can include some of your context. And so I would love to know if that's something you'd be interested in. If you go to dopaminepodcast@gmail.com, or if you're watching somewhere that has a comment section, leave a comment and let me know if that's interesting to you. So my main theme for 2022 is less is more. And so that's probably going to mean shorter podcasts. That might be, putting less focus on tinkering with things that don't necessarily need to be tinkered with. And I'm still kind of defining the specifics of what that means, but that's kind of where I feel like I'm at, is this idea of less is more and going from there. And so if you have a general mantra, that can also help. Again, if it's like being more active, could be something like that. Or crying more, or playing more Animal Crossing. If you're not a person that is really good at resting like I am. And or I don't know, if you need to be bad because, like, maybe you've been trying too hard to be a good person, you're like, be bad, take shortcuts. It doesn't always have to be like this upward quote unquote focus, right? We can experience depression because we haven't experienced sadness. And I think you can also experience declines in your healing or achievement if you are not allowing yourself to have human moments and allowing yourself to cry or freak out or be neurotic every once in a while, and repair relationships and do all those healing things. But like, if you're suppressing, is really what I mean, that could be very much a negative, even though it can be perceived as a positive, if that makes sense. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I have to go get my laundry, and the kids are coming, and we're going to have a good new year. So I hope you have a good new year. I hope you have something to do. If you don't, that's cool too. Enjoy yourself, rest, relax, prime yourself, and cast a vision. And even if you're not in that place too, like, it's about where you are. And so take a moment to look at some of the good things that have happened in this last year, and maybe some of the bad, but like, make sure find that balance of like, am I putting a bias towards the negative because the negative feels more realistic? Optimism is also realistic, for the record. So with that said, 2022 for me, less is more, trying some webinars and continuing this weight loss trajectory, and resting. That's a big thing for me too. So with much love and sincerity, I love you guys very much. Thank you for listening to the podcast. 2021 has been a better year than 2020 for sure, for me personally. And happy to see what 2022 has to offer. And so with that, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff on our website at dopeintp.com, or if you go to dopaminepodcast.com, DOPE, by the way, it's DOPEAMINE. It's like, yo, that's dope. You can go on there, and we have some courses that you can sign up for if you're an INTP in the Myers-Briggs system, based on my experience and things that I've learned. I have a productivity course. I have things related to relationships, and a course called Cosmic Calibration, which is all about maximizing your thinking and discerning that from the feeling side of things. I think that's a really good calibration point if you're trying to do some growth work as an INTP. That's a really great way to start off the year. And if you're not ready for any of that stuff, we have an email list that you can sign up for, and in your inbox you'll get what I call Exploring the Inner Cosmos, which is a multi-part series about exploring the way that we input information, process, and then output information, and like how that relates to creativity and expression and all that fun stuff. So if you want to get to know how I teach and some secret podcasts, that's what you can do. Dopaminepodcast.com. I've been C-Note. I appreciate you, and take care of yourselves and each other. And I'll talk to you next time on Dopamine. See ya.